I am Nocturne's hammer, the enemies of the Emperor will break before me. So says Adrax Agatone, the new Salamanders character from Games Workshop. Hello and welcome to another Auspex Tactics unit review video. Today we'll be looking at the leaked rules for Adrax Agatone, the very nice Salamanders model that Games Workshop teased today. First things first, I think this guy looks pretty badass. He's ready to toast a whole load of heretics with that handheld flamer device. Sticking to some classic Salamanders weapons and iconography with this guy. He's got a thunder hammer, he's got a flamer, he's covered in dragons and scales and stuff. It's a really nice model in my opinion. I was a little surprised that they didn't wind up just going with turning Vulcan Hestan into a Primaris character, but I'm happy that Salamanders have two characters to be running around with, and it makes the army more favourable and more unique. This guy is supposedly the captain of the Salamanders' third company. We'll find out more about him from Games Workshop soon, no doubt. But now let's take a look at his leaked rules. So, Adrax Agatone is a 140-point independent character model. He is armed with Drakas, his custom flamer, Malleus Nocturne, his big thunder hammer, and frag and crack grenades. He has the typical stat line for a Primaris captain model. His movement of 6, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2 up, strength and toughness 4, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2 up save. Presumably it's a bit better because Salamanders are very good at making arms and armour. Like all Space Marine captains, he has an Iron Halo for a 4 up impulse save, and like all the new Space Marines, he has the Angels of Death special rule, giving him shock assault for +1 attack on the charge or when he's charged or makes a heroic intervention, and access to the new doctrines, which will allow his flamer to be an extra AP-1 when your army is in the tactical doctrine. The Salamanders have a boosted tactical doctrine, which gives +1 to wound with flamer and melter weapons when the tactical doctrine is in effect, so this will also affect his nice flamer. Drakas, the fancy flamer, has a range of 6. It's an assault d6 weapon, it's strength 4, AP-1, and damage 1, and like all flamers it auto hits the enemy. So with the Salamander's tactical doctrine in effect, it will be AP-2 and have +1 to wound, so wounding Space Marines on 3s. Sounds good for clearing out a few chaff models. Malleus Nocturne, the nice thunder hammer that he's carrying, has a strength of ×2, so that will make him strength 8, AP-3, and damage of 4. Like most thunder hammers and power fists, he suffers a -1 to his hit roll penalty while he's in close combat and using it, so he'll usually hit on 3 ups rerolling 1s with this. So he's a decently fighty little captain. He also has a couple of nice special rules. Firstly, onto the anvil, friendly Salamanders units can add 1 to their wound rolls in close combat on a turn where they charged, were charged, or made a heroic intervention. Now this is potentially very powerful. +1 to wounds is an amazing buff, and if he charges in with a tooled up squad of Marines that are kitted out for close combat, maybe aggressors, assault centurions, vanguard veterans, anything like that will get +1 to wounds, and that will do a lot more damage to the enemy. Of course, as it's an aura ability, that will also benefit himself, so usually on the first round of close combat, this guy will even be wounding knights on 3s with this massive thunder hammer, and he'll be wounding anything that's toughness 7 or lower on 2s. Very nasty. He also is carrying a fancy cloak called an Iridian Drakehide Cloak. This cloak allows him to subtract 1 from all damage inflicted on him, so for example a damage 3 weapon would only inflict 2 damage if he fails his saving throw. And finally, as a Space Marine captain, he gets the Rites of Battle special rule, so that's his normal aura of reroll 1s to hit within 6 inches. So overall, he's a solid melee character that ideally wants to be charging into the enemy lines alongside a squad or 2 of tooled up assault infantry. So how would I run this guy on the battlefield? I think that the main challenge is going to be delivering Mr. Agatone into close combat, as he isn't particularly fast, so he will need to either buy a transport or footslog up the board. If you're buying a transport, an impulsor might not be a bad idea. You wouldn't be able to make much use of the Impulsor's signature ability, which is units being able to get out of it after it's moved, but you could advance it and a bunch of other Impulsors up the board, ready to disgorge some Primaris intercessors wielding Thunderhammers on turn 2. If you go heavy on this strategy, I'd be quite tempted to make use of the shield domes on the Impulsors to stop the enemy cracking more than 1 or 2, even with dedicated anti-tank firepower. If you were foot slogging him, either you could try running him up the board behind some assault infantry, say aggressors or assault centurions, or even just in a horde of Salamanders intercessors laying down bolter shots before charging in with their +1 to wound on the charge. Alternatively, you could keep him back with your gun line and just use him as a counter-attack unit to hit any enemy units that come too close. If you do throw him into the thick of the enemy and he dies due to too much enemy firepower despite his numerous defensive buffs, there's rumoured to be a new Salamanders stratagem that will bring him back up on 1 wound on a 4-up, ready to hit some people with his Thunderhammer one last time. Now let's just talk quickly about his combat potential before we leave him, because he has the potential to do a crazy amount of damage. With Salamander rerolls that every Salamander's unit get synergize really well with his Thunderhammer. Usually Smash Captains with Thunderhammers don't have the ability to reroll 2s, they can only reroll 1s, so a lot of hits are wasted. With the Salamander's tactic, you can reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll in the fight phase for each unit, so at least 1 2 and 1 failed wound roll can be rerolled, and this really pushes his damage output through the roof. He has so many attacks that he's quite likely to roll a 2 on a hit roll, and has every chance of rolling a 1 on a wound roll, so you have a good chance of making use of both rerolls with this guy each fight phase. So let's do the maths versus a knight for this guy. I already looked at the Imperial Fists character, and he can do 20 wounds to a knight if he fights twice with one of the stratagems from the Space Marines Codex. Feel free to go and check it out after this one. Now the maths with the Salamander's rerolls is quite complicated, but fortunately I quite like a puzzle. After the Salamander's reroll is applied, he has an average of 5.11 hits on the knight out of his 6 attacks. He will then wound it on 3s due to his +1 to wound, and after the 87% chance of generating a Salamander's reroll to wound, he will then have 4 wounds on average. The knight will then save, leaving us an average of 3.3 failed saves, which at damage 4 nets us an average 13.3 damage. So if this guy fights twice, he will happily one-shot a knight all by himself. Games Workshop really has given these guys the tools to take down the nastiest things in the game. Overall, I would rate this guy as moderately competitive. Obviously his close combat stats are absolutely amazing if he gets there. I just have to worry that with it only 6-inch move and limited mobility options, he might not be able to make it to close combat before the enemy shoots him dead. Some clever thinking might be required to get this guy to connect with the juicy targets he wants to be tangling with. So, would you run this guy as part of your Salamander's army? I look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for more Space Marine videos each week. I'm planning on taking a look at the Repulsor Executioner and the new Infiltrators and Incursors over the coming week, so I'll see you in the next video.